Hello, thank you all for joining us. I see our numbers still ticking up. Excellent. I'll wait a couple more moments. I know we have about a third of our RSVPs have joined. I'll take a quick moment. Thank you all for joining. All right, still steadily increasing. We'll give it another moment. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are so glad that you decided to spend part of your night with us, and it is our intention to make the next hour a really valuable one for you. My name is Rachel Grosso. I'm a planner with Kittelson, and I'll be moderating tonight's webinar and Q&A. Our speakers today are Brandon Nevers, who has been with Kittelson for more than 25 years and has been our CEO since January 2020. Abby Morgan, an associate engineer who leads our emerging technology practice, and she'll talk with us today about her experiences working in both the public and private sectors. Brian Bustos, a senior engineer in our Boise office, who's been with Kittelson since March 2021, and Amanua Osafo, an engineering associate in our Orlando office, who's been with the firm since January 2020. Brandon, Abby, Brian, and Amanua will each tell you more about their journeys to Kittelson later on. But before they begin, we'd love to know who's joined us this evening, and so I'm going to launch a quick poll to learn more about all of you. So who is on the call today? We'll keep this up for a couple of moments. Oh, responses ticking in, very fun. Excellent. Couple more moments. We're at 83% voted right now, so I'd love to get that up to 90, or dare I say 100. 5 more seconds. Closer, closer, closer. Okay, great, thank you. So it seems like we've got a variety of people joining us tonight, a lot of graduate students. Oh, I can share the results. Here you are, now you can see them too. We've got about 42% graduate students, a little less than that undergrads, and a few PhDs as well, and some folks who are considering a career change. That's so cool. Well, thank you all for joining us, regardless of where you're at in your educational and professional journey. And before we dive any deeper, I'm going to take us through some logistics. This is the first of 2 virtual events that we're offering in our Conversations with Kittelson series. This series is meant to be exactly that, an open conversation with transportation professionals who were in your shoes maybe a year ago or maybe 20, but who can look back on their experiences and share with you what they've learned. And most importantly, see what questions you have as you evaluate your career options. You are invited to join us for our next event as well, where we'll talk about our internship program, how it's structured, and what opportunities we're offering for summer 2023. So stick around till the end to find out more about that. Okay. Today, we're going to start with an overview of career paths in transportation, what to think about as you evaluate prospective employers and career paths, and a bit about our culture and values at Kittelson. We believe that asking questions about an organization is such an important part of evaluating a potential workplace and building a career that aligns with your purpose and values. The presentation will be fairly short because it's our intention to make more time for your questions, and we've already gotten some great ones through the RSVP form, so thanks for those. We're really excited to dive in, and I also welcome and encourage you to use the chat box in GoToWebinar panel to post questions throughout the presentation, and I will get to as many of those as I can. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Abby to kick us off.
All right, thank you, Rachel, and thanks everybody for joining us this evening. I'm excited to talk to you tonight about opportunities that you could have and the fun that you could have with a career in transportation. I've got to say that a lot happens behind the scenes to build and operate a strong and resilient transportation system. Some of the jobs include designing roads and bridges, studying safety or environmental impacts, planning freight logistics, managing contracts or grants, advancing the deployment and the development of new tools or new technologies, and there is a whole lot more. Each of these different areas are critical to the operation of public and private transportation organizations. So I'm going to start our session with an overview of public sector opportunities, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who will share his private sector experience. So as Rachel introduced, I'm Abby Morgan. I lead our emerging technology practice across our firm. I live in South Florida and I work remotely out of our Washington, D.C. office. From a young age, I was very curious about how stuff works. I started studying robotics and mechanical engineering in college. I spent my first 2 summers working in a machine shop. And it wasn't until I took a few classes in civil engineering and American culture studies that I really started to get more interested in learning about the impacts that transportation has on our culture and our built environment. So in my junior year, I ended up catching that transportation bug and switching majors to civil engineering. And I've benefited from 2 internship opportunities along my career. Both were focused on public service and policy development. The first was with the U.S. Department of Transportation's SIPDIG program, and the second was the ENO Leadership Development Conference. I encourage you to take a look at either of those if they sound interesting to you. Today I'm going to share some of my experience from my career, which has transitioned from private transportation planning company to the federal government and then back to the private sector here at Kittelson. I specialize in, next slide please, thanks, in helping public agencies implement new technologies. I work a lot with connected and automated vehicles, and in the past 5 years alone, I've had really cool opportunities to work with agencies across the country and at all levels of government. So I'm going to walk you through some examples of the types of work public agencies lead. Here in the US, there are 3 levels of government. In transportation, these levels of government are represented by the U.S. Department of Transportation at the federal level, by state departments of transportation at the state level, and at the local level, we've got regional and municipal governments, transit agencies, port authorities, and more. At each level of government, there are a variety of skills that are needed. We need engineers, we need planners, data analysts, lawyers, maintenance personnel, contract managers, accountants, just to name a few. We start at the federal level. The federal government regulates and enforces the requirements for things like safety systems or environmental impacts. Sometimes these standards are adopted by multiple countries where they become global regulations. When I worked at the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, I developed the first policy and performance metrics for some advanced driver assistance technologies that are on many vehicles today. The federal government also creates guidance to standardize practices across the country so that there's more consistency from state to state or across state lines. And the federal government funds research to advance safety technologies or to improve design or operational efficiencies. For example, here I helped the Federal Highway Administration evaluate how connected vehicle deployments in Tampa, New York, and Wyoming impacted mobility. Now, these pilot deployments tested communications equipment and messaging in different locations and in different traffic conditions. But the lessons learned from each of these deployments that we developed helped us create guidance and enhanced standards that can be applied to future deployments across the country. At the state level, the state departments of transportation also work to adopt standard practices such as design standards or modeling guides. These let us drive, fly, ride trains across state lines without having any issues. It also helps us move not only people, but goods, materials through interstate pipelines, for example, because of that standardization. Now, states also make plans for future transportation needs. They have to predict how population changes, employment changes, or travel behavior changes might impact the way we move, and maybe decide if we need more capacity Do we need to widen roads, build new bridges? One really neat project that I've had an opportunity to work on last year, we just wrapped up an update to the Highway Capacity Manual. So this is the go-to handbook for designing roadway capacity. And for the first time ever, we added factors to adjust capacity estimations based on the number of connected and automated vehicles that you might have in your travel stream. So this is a really cool thing to see our hard work in research end up being implemented in one of our textbooks. At the local level, this was kind of one of the reasons that I ended up leaving the federal government and joining Kittelson, was so that I could help local governments understand what changes are coming to transportation due to new technologies. Here at Kittelson, I work with local governments to understand their community needs. Is there a need for new transportation alternatives or better traffic management? Once I understand these needs, I can help agencies identify specific technologies or strategies that can help them solve their specific problems. So this might include planning a technology deployment, like a connected intersection project, or maybe just updating data collection practices and performance monitoring techniques. I write technology transition plans to guide local agencies as they develop policy, land use plans, think through their workforce development needs, or perhaps strategize their infrastructure investments. These technology transition plans have focused on fiber optic communication networks, electric vehicle charging, micromobility like e-scooters, and automated vehicles, and a whole lot more. So we've talked about the three opportunities for jobs at the federal, state, and local level. Let me wrap up with a few tips that have helped me throughout my career. The first is to find mentors. I've really benefited from strong relationships with mentors who have trained me, they've challenged me, and they've helped me navigate and consider new careers and career opportunities, like going back to graduate school, starting a career in the federal government, and making the shift to private consulting. My second tip for you is to be a professional problem solver. I like to step away from the computer, get my hands dirty to learn new skills, but I always like to approach any project or any problem first asking, what problem are we trying to solve? What are our needs and why are we here? If I start with that fundamental problem solving, I can find the right solutions that address my client's needs, my agency's needs. And finally, my last tip is to be patient. I've had the opportunity to work on some very exciting projects throughout my career. Some of these big projects take years to complete, but let me tell you, being patient, it pays off, because when your work makes a lasting impact on people's lives, it's really exciting and meaningful. I'm going to now turn it over to Brian, who's going to share some of his career opportunities that he's experienced on the private industry side.
Thank you, Abby, and good evening, everyone. As Rachel stated, my name is Brian Bustos. I am a senior engineer based out of Kittleson's Boise, Idaho office. I'm also a graduate of the University of Central Florida, where I received my bachelor's in civil engineering, and I received my master's in engineering management from Penn State University. Abby shared a great overview of her experience working in the public sector before coming to Kittelson. My experience has been more on the private side of the profession, so I'll try to offer some thoughts about my path with the hope that you can begin to understand how they contrast as you start to think about which one might be of specific interest to you. Next slide, please. In addition to working with public agencies, private sector consultants also work with a variety of other client types. Commercial clients such as Costco, Nike, and Disney World work with transportation engineering, planning firms across the country in order to assess their impacts on the transportation systems around them. Something I have enjoyed experiencing in the private sector is the chance to work on a wide variety of transportation issues and problems. Next slide, please. This is a large list of potential roles that you could serve in transportation engineering and planning. As you saw in my first slide, I've worked for 4 different firms in my 9-year career and have had multiple roles during that time. As you begin your search for a place to call home, here are some suggestions I suggest you think about. Some questions I suggest you think about. What size firm do you want to work for? There are small 1 or 2 person firms, 200-person firms, 20,000 multinational firms. The point is, it's not what's good for one person might not be good for the next. Second question is, do you want to work for a firm that specializes in one thing or on many things? Third, do you want to work on more theoretical, conceptual stuff? Or would you rather work on more tangible ideas, stuff that you can see the output of your actions? The fourth question, and not necessarily the one that's important, is that how much time do you want to spend in the office? How much time do you want to spend in the field? Or is there some combination of both that would work best for you? You can be successful on any type of team. Some firms have set teams where you work on one type of project, and there's nothing wrong with that. Other firms, like Kittelson, encourage new employees, both fresh out of college like yourselves, and those who've been working in the industry for X amount of years, like myself, to try out some of these other roles, to experience working on other types of projects and see if there is a fit. You can come into Kittelson as someone who's been working solely in design and try your hand at transportation planning, transportation analysis, become a contributor for various types of research projects for public agencies. The main point is you are going to have a 30+ year career. You can make choices as you go. As you're considering the private sector, it's important to seek out the values, culture, or environments that are important to you at that time. Your career is in your hands. Next slide, please. My personal path was unique to me, and every one of you will forge your own in your careers. I started off in the rail construction industry, serving as a construction manager and construction engineer for my first 2 jobs. These jobs focus on construction of transportation facilities and construction of railroad infrastructure throughout the US. A lot of my time for these projects was spent in the fields on construction activities, managing them, ensuring the projects were completed safely, efficiently, correctly, up to standards. I was a newcomer who had to learn, but it was a challenge that I wanted to take. There were times where my lack of knowledge was humbling, but I took it as an opportunity to learn and to grow. These positions allowed me to see the completion of the design process. I was able to spend time with both designers and contractors, giving me different perspectives on the entire process. I got to see designs take shape and become reality. Next slide, please. At that point in my career, I had spent 3 years in the field on various construction projects. I had seen the designs of engineers taken from concept and turned into the real tangible thing. I had developed this base of knowledge that included how these things were built. It was important to me at that stage in my career to continue to develop myself as a professional. I wanted to take the next step in my career as I saw fit. That next step took me to the field of transportation design, first in the Northeast and most recently here in the Pacific Northwest. In simple terms, transportation engineers and planners attempt to solve some basic transportation-related problem. These problems can range from congestion, pedestrian, bicycle safety, public transportation issues or improvements, and a myriad of other reasons. The 2 photos here are roundabouts recently completed in the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, the one on the right was completed last week in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Public officials identify congestion and ped bike safety as the main areas of concern for these projects. At my firm, through our planning, analysis, and design, we were able to produce these options that we hope would be able to play a part in solving those problems. One of the most satisfying things about design for me is seeing something you are part of putting together at the very beginning in real life and being able to walk, bike, or drive through it, seeing the fruits of your labor in the real world. Becoming a designer presented me another step of the entire project process. I had started in construction, and now I've worked from the initial conceptual design, continued all the way through the final design. Next slide, please. So hopefully I provide some details on different paths I took. Some general tips I hope to give you during the first 9 years of my career. Number 1 is to ask questions. Communication is key. One of the biggest things I try to tell new employees is to not be afraid to ask questions. Asking thoughtful questions and communicating effectively are traits that will help you learn to improve and show your employer that you're willing and able to try to develop. This tip also applies when you try to find a job. Those interviewers are very impressed when you ask thoughtful questions during an interview process. Second, how's it made? Those lines, curves, and shapes on your computer screen are being built, and seeing how things go together out in the field was an invaluable part of the early part of my career, and that benefits me even today. Take every opportunity given to you to spend some time in the field. Third, do not panic. To me, the most useful thing at my time at UCF and Penn State was the knowledge and the confidence I had to work through difficult problems. Those skills were developed through hours and hours of study in calculus, statistics, structural analysis, studying for the FE, studying for the PE. That work put in was invaluable for me becoming the engineer I am today. We regularly encounter problems in design and in construction, and the ability to address those problems effectively plays a vital role in your ability to complete projects on time. Lastly, seek out what's important to you. More and more college graduates are no longer content with working for a company that is just willing to hire them. They're seeking a company that best fits with their values, their culture, and their purpose. Kittelson, in particular, asks candidates to think about how much Kittelson is a good fit for them, as Kittelson spends time thinking how good of a fit is that candidate for the company. For me personally, coming to Kittelson, I wanted to work on transportation projects that did things not because they were the way it's always been done, but were willing to and able to think outside the box. I wanted to work for a place that was more than just a design firm, that has a plethora of opportunities to do research, planning, and all those other types of things we've discussed. I sought a place that was innovative, the type of firm that spends time anticipating the next transportation paradigm shift and is gearing up to be ready to address that shift. And personally, I think I found it at Kittelson. Thank you for your time. Next, Amanua is going to provide some job searching tips as you take that next step in your career in transportation.
Thanks, Brian. Now that you've had the experiences of team members who have found their way to Kittelson after various roles in the public and private sectors, we want to offer you some tips for getting started in a career that aligns with your values and purpose. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a bit about my background. Next slide, please. My name is Amanua Osafo. I got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the oldest engineering university in Ghana, where I'm originally from. In 2017, I moved to Louisiana to start a master's degree. I started at LSU and eventually graduated with a degree in transportation engineering from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. During my undergrad, I did internships with multiple agencies in Ghana. While obtaining my master's degree, I worked with the Louisiana Transportation Research Center, working in the ITS and Traffic Operations Lab on different projects that was of interest to LADOTD. Next slide, please. So one of the best things you can do for yourself in this job search journey is to think about what you really want. And so in this section, we'll be talking about some questions you need to consider as you do some introspection. We will also talk about how to make connections to help in your search. And then finally, when you get the offer, some things to consider. Next slide, please. Because you want to set yourself up for success, you may want to think about what really matters to you. What environment brings out the best in you? What types of things do not work well for you? So in your job search, consider if the company has a path to where you want your career to lead. If there are growth opportunities or opportunities for mentorship. For me, I work better in a collaborative environment, and the team I work with means as much to me as the kind of work that we do. And so during the interview process, when I connected with many people at the firm, I knew that it would work out quite well for me. I have a friend who thrives off competition and pressure. He needs it to propel himself forward. So he chose to work with a company that values metrics and highly reward individual achievements. I have another friend who also made his decisions solely based on who his direct supervisor would be, because he found value in the mentorship he would receive by closely working with this person. So as you go into conversations with different companies, be aware of yourself and what the company values. But the bottom line is know yourself and what works best for you. At Kittelson, some of the things that we look out for in candidates is their desire to carve their own path, a lifelong learning attitude and outward focus. Next slide, please. After the self-reflection, you will need to find out what types of jobs are available. And a good way to do that is through your network. Because you're not yet in the industry, or most of you are not yet in the industry, one of the ways you can expand your network can be through career fairs, your professors, by joining a professional organization, going for conferences, and using LinkedIn, which can be pretty powerful. For me, I used almost all the options you see on the screen. I conducted informational interviews with persons on LinkedIn who had a career trajectory that I was interested in. And you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to help you if you carefully craft your message to them. I was also a regular at TRB and other conferences, which were all sponsored by my school or a professional organization. I know conferences can be expensive, but there are many opportunities to attend them for free as a student. I eventually ended up at Kittelson through an ITE meeting at LSU. Next slide, please. So you will eventually get an offer. And when you do, there are a few things you must think about as you consider compensation. What does the company offer beyond the base salary? What are their health insurance policies? What opportunities are there for professional support? Are there time-based benefits? You know, for example, at Kittelson, we have an 80-hour timesheet. So if you work 50 hours this week, you can work 30 hours the next. You may also want to consider if the company offers employee bonuses and what their retirement contributions are. Lastly, consider the people you work with, if you share similar values. Considering all of these will help you make a decision that is right for you. So now I'll pass it over to Brandon to talk more about our values at Kittelson.
All right, thank you, Amanua, and hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Nevers. It's great to be here. I'm in our Reston, Virginia office and currently serve as our president and CEO. I built my career at Kittelson, starting off in an entry-level position in 1996. I have an undergraduate degree in civil engineering and started by taking on increasing roles over time and was able to work across multiple offices. So after Portland, moved to Baltimore, Maryland when we began our practice there, and then Reston, Virginia, where I am now. I've spent most of my career doing project work and consider myself a generalist, but I'm fortunate to have served in leadership positions over time. And I really enjoy discussions like this one, where I have a chance to talk about our firm, our culture and values, and helping others navigate their career paths. All right, so a little bit about Kittelson. We're a transportation planning and engineering firm, and we're filled with transportation enthusiasts, people who practice what they preach through how they travel the transportation systems that they plan, study, and design. We have over 300 people who bring perspectives from all around the world. Our team members have backgrounds in traditional fields like engineering and planning, but also disciplines like public health, mathematics, and psychology. This isn't a coincidence. We seek candidates with unique backgrounds, experiences, and attributes. This diversity enriches our culture. It contributes to an environment where we learn from one another, and it allows us to work and view our work through a different lens, and all of that makes us better professionals. Our employees are located in over 24 offices in a dozen states. Our first office and where the company was founded began in Portland, Oregon in 1985. We opened our first office on the East Coast in Fort Lauderdale in 1996. But over time, our growth has been largely driven through organic, one-at-a-time hiring and built around a philosophy of follow our people. We hire motivated, passionate professionals and encourage them to pursue their interests in ways that opens new doors for others. This naturally leads us into new markets and new practice areas and how the firm has grown over time. Our operating philosophy is one firm, many locations. This means we don't form project teams just based on geography, and our offices don't compete against one another. We're all on the same team. Okay, so Rachel talked about at the outset how it's important to ask questions when you're in your job search to learn about an organization. And I think the best place to start is its core values. Now, a company's values aren't just what's posted on its website. It's what truly drives the culture and key decisions the organization makes. So your challenge is to look for evidence in how the company operates, how the company treats its employees, the relationship among employees, and to see whether the behaviors and actions that you observe follow the stated values. And based on all of that, decide what's best for you and what suits you what suits you the best. So I'll describe our values. We strive to maintain outward focus on those around us, and that means prioritizing the needs of others above our own. And when we do that, it means we have a whole group of others looking out for each of us. But that can only happen within a trust-based environment. Trust means that in areas of gray where there's room for judgment or options, that the firm errs on the side of our people and our people err on the side of our firm. And we want to extend this model to all of those we work with, our teaming partners, clients, and the public we interact with. I mentioned the phrase one firm and many locations earlier. Even before the pandemic, we were regularly working across offices and using Teams and cloud-based file sharing. It's built into our culture and how we operate. We maintain a flexible work environment where we look to staff to assess where and how they work best. And now many of our staff work with some form of hybrid schedule. We simply ask that people consider the needs of others in their decision. So tying back to outward focus, we want to ensure the staff, particularly those who are newer to the firm, are receiving guidance, support, and mentoring to support their growth as they begin their careers or just simply join the firm. Many new employees want to be in an office, and along with many others for that matter, to build relationships and really experience the firm. So maintaining strong, vibrant offices is an important objective for us and something we're actively talking about as we think about the future of our firm. Okay, before I wrap up and turn it back to Rachel and get into Q&A, I want to let everyone know that if you want to learn more about our firm and what a career at Kittelson might look like, you can go to our website at kittelson.com/careers. And if it's something you truly want to explore, please express interest. All right, Rachel, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Brendan, and thanks to all of our panelists. I am going to stop sharing our slides so we can get into Q&A. And before we do that, I have one quick question for you, maybe two. I'm going to launch another poll here. What is most important to you when choosing an employer? And so, votes are coming in. Great, thank you so much for participating. We'll give it a few more moments. We can definitely get over 50% voted. Great, eking all the way up. All right, just a few more moments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for voting. Our results look a little something like this. 57% are overwhelming majority citing culture and values of the firm as being the most important, followed by salary and location. A couple others for benefits and size of the firm. So that's pretty cool. Very interesting for us to hear. And we do have one more question for you, but I'll get to that one later. So we're going to start off with our Q&A going around the horn and beginning with Abby. What has been the most rewarding part of your career in transportation?
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say for me, really what I take enjoyment and what drives me and my passion is really the motivation to help save lives. There's a lot that we can do to really just improve the system. I think every single person on a day-to-day basis is impacted by transportation. And if I can do even any small thing that can help save someone's life or reduce risk of injury in a crash, I'll look for it. So for me, I get excited about technology strategies that can do that, but there's so many ways that we could do that across our profession, and that's really exciting to me.
Thanks. Let's hand it over to Brian next, and then we'll hear from Amanua and Brendan.
Sure. For me, really, it's seeing, and I kind of talked about it during my presentation, seeing something you just worked through, you put hours and hours into, you sweated, you worked nights just to be able to see it actually get built and see how it improves people's lives. As you might know, some people don't like roundabouts, and once they start using them and realizing the benefits of them and how much more safer they are, and turning their opinions around really was one of the most rewarding things I got to do early in my career as a designer.
For me, I mentioned earlier that the team I work with is important to me, and so it's been very rewarding working with a group of great people and solving, issues in the world. It's kind of like Avengers, a group of Avengers solving problems in the world. So that's been the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, for me, it ties to relationships. The professional relationships are the thing that probably matter most. What's really rewarding is just building working relationships and helping people and seeing people grow throughout their career and kind of where they start with some aspirations and where they're able to take that.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is that we'd like to know a little bit more about is how the industry has changed in the last decade and where you see it going in the future, particularly in light of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was passed last November and the recent Inflation and Reduction Act this past September. Brandon, if you want to take a stab at that, and then our other panelists, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, 2012 was a very different environment. It was lean. We were coming out of a recession. That was one of the most difficult kind of phases of a profession for most organizations who went through that and had to recalibrate, had to scrap, had to try to kind of get bearings on where that next growth was going to come from. So kind of big picture, what I think is different, yeah, we're much more in a boom cycle when it comes to our industry. So opportunities abound, and now trying to manage other stresses like how to get the work done that needs to be done. But with all that said, I think the other big difference is that the professions become more multidisciplinary, and that's a good thing. We're talking more about health, we're talking more about equity, safety, which we were talking about then is much more commonplace, multimodal, all these things are just kind of a core part of the industry now. It's really cool to see how it's evolved and see that play out in the projects we work on.
Maybe I can chime in just with a couple additions. I agree with everything Brandon's saying. I think for me, one of the things that's really exciting over the past 10 years, 10 years ago, I was researching some innovative technologies that were on a couple vehicles out there, just a few models, things like forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. Now they're on many vehicles that we can have today. So I think there's been a lot of things that we were testing and developing, and now they're here. And so now the question is, okay, well, does that change our behavior? How do we kind of adapt and evolve as travelers or drivers, transportation system users? So there's a lot of things that you can think about theoretically, and then you put it in the hands of consumers and you learn how it really works in the real world. So I'm really excited to kind of see we're at this really neat pivot where a lot of the technologies we've been dreaming about are actually coming to our roadway system. And so now we get to see sort of what those impacts are in the real world.
Great, thank you. That leads pretty naturally into the next question, one for everyone. We will start with Brian this time. What is your favorite project that you worked on at Kittelson? And feel free to hand it over to whomever you'd like to speak next.
Sure. As you might have noticed, I've been with Kittelson for about 17 months now. So I've worked on a few longer term projects. One in particular, actually one of my first ones, is a raised bike lane in the city of Boise. This is a rather unique idea, having a raised bike lane. And we've had to do a lot of unique things in order to fit it into the existing roadway. I think it shows a sign that Boise is trying to become more bike friendly. It shows a sign that they're willing to take risks. Raised bike lanes are not as popular as the at grade bike lanes. So I know I've had a short career at Kittelson, but that's really one that stood out to me. I'll pass along to Abby.
Well, yeah, I just wrapped up, which is kind of sad because I really love this project. But for about almost 2 years, we've just been working with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So that's the regional planning organization for the Dallas-Fort Worth mega region. And they came to us for help understanding the impacts of automated vehicles, and we actually wrote a guidebook for their local agencies. Kind of what are these technologies, and rather than just talking theoretically, what actions should you actually take to implement them, to get them into your policies? And so for me, it was really exciting because it's a technology that I love, but it it helps to implement them. It helps give the actual tangible guidance that the local agencies need. So that was a really exciting project and fun to create a great guidebook that I hope a lot of agencies use. I'll turn it over to Amanua.
Yeah, for me, it's still a project I'm working on. We are evaluating transit options on New Hampshire Avenue in Montgomery County. And I know that's in Maryland, even though I work in Orlando, but I'm pretty excited about that because it's the first time I get to code a transit system of that magnitude in Vista. So I think that's pretty cool.
All right, I'll add, it goes back a few years, but it's a research project that I worked on a little over 10 years ago on travel time reliability, which was a new topic at the time. And it was cool for many levels. One, it was at the beginning of probe data coming into play and really understanding what that data can do differently and some of the statistics behind it. But I was able to work with a great team of professors that, as I was in meetings and doing a lot of the note taking and just trying to prepare documents, I was learning and absorbing just really fascinating material that was kind of a precursor to the direction the profession's going in. And kind of another side benefit of that research project is there's multiple opportunities where all of the teams would get together and you could hear about a broad range of what was happening. So just that exposure to and being able to interact and dialogue and hear that leading edge work and be in the same room was really cool.
Great, thank you all. And thank all of you attendees. We have so many questions coming in through the chat. This one was asked a couple of different ways, and so I'm just going to try to squish it all into one question. Abby, this one I'm going to kick over to you. What are the primary differences between transportation planning and engineering skills? Is there overlap? Can someone be a planner and an engineer? Do we look for that at Kittelson?
Great
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Lots of parts. So I will say yes to all of that. So I'm an engineer by training, but a lot of the work that I do today is really traditional planning. I'm just thinking about maybe a new technology in the planning arena. So I've learned on the job in the last 6 years. I've been learning the planning process rather than kind of the other way around. I think for me, what's important and the skills that are important aren't so specific to engineering or planning. For me, it's understanding the process. So what's been really helpful and important to me is why do we do things the way we do? How do we do them? Kind of understanding what my work today plays into the next steps, either of the task, the project, the agency's efforts. I mean, think about it. It takes a lot to get to constructing a new interstate. So where are you in that overall process, and kind of how does the work that you're doing impact the next? Some of that's going to be planning. We need to plan a long time out and then eventually get to the engineering. For me, having an understanding of both is really helpful, because then I can kind of think through, how does this technology work? That's why I need to plan for it, you know, or how do we eventually build an interstate system? That's why I need to start planning for it in advance so that I can get all those steps done. So I think for me, again, kind of one of my tips was being a professional problem solver. Approach those basic problem solving. It's exactly the same skills for both planning and engineering. I think kind of the way it has impacted me, that my planning work has been really more forward thinking. What do we need in 2045, 2050? How do I get that process started now to be there? And engineering's been a lot more of that. How does it work? What's the equation that gets me there to that final project? But having an understanding of both skills, I think, is really important and valuable for any student or prospective hire.
Thanks so much, Abby. And I'll just open that up because I know that everyone on this call has worked on a variety of projects. If there's anything else anyone would like to add.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, Great, moving right along. Brian, this one is for you. You've shifted your interest within transportation throughout your career. Could you discuss how you navigated those evolutions and any advice for transition, particularly for someone who's looking to try to bridge that gap and jump into transportation?
I think the times of people working for the same firm for 30 years is kind of going away, but not that, Brandon and all these other folks who worked at Kittelson for a while, but jumping around is something that will benefit you, give you an opportunity to experience all different things. Besides my first job, every other job I got, I was able to meet people through connections and networking. So it's really about networking and meeting people and seeing what's out there. In my construction job, I met with some surveyors who had worked for a design firm. They connected me to the lead of the design at that firm, and that's when I made that move to design. My mentor at my second firm, he switched over to another firm, and I followed him there. It's all about making connections and utilizing that to help you reach your goals. Like I said in my presentation, I started in construction for my myriad of reasons, but I kind of wanted to see how things were built. And then I made the decision in my life to go towards design. And I used every opportunity that I could. I networked, I joined ASCE, ITE, and I met people. And just through general discussions, they knew those were things I wanted to do. And when opportunities came up, they thought of me. And that was so beneficial, obviously, to get me here where I am today. Hope that answers the question. But
I think that was great. Abby, anything you want to add about transitions?
Yeah, I echo, really, transitions can be kind of different companies or public to private. Transitions can also be the types of project work that you work on within one firm. I think that's one of the things that we really try with any new hires is to get your exposure to as much different types of projects. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so I think for me, kind of, I've had a lot of like, this is neat. Let me try that. I didn't start civil engineering. I started mechanical and kind of found a passion, and that passion's really helped me craft a career, throughout government, private industry, and then even different types of project work that I've been on. So I think, again, learning and getting exposure, like Brian said, is really helpful, meeting new people.
Great, thank you. Amanua, this one is for you. Would you please talk a little bit more about your experience as an international student and then an international employee in the United States and what that job search was like? I know you talked a little bit about that, but just we've gotten a lot of questions from presumably some international students who'd like to hear more.
Okay, I would start with, because you probably didn't go to high school or college here, well, maybe college, but high school here, you probably do not have a lot of network. So I would say that definitely join professional organizations, reach out to people who are from your country on LinkedIn who are in the same industry as you and ask them questions. They will have more specific insight for you. Another thing is not just people from your country, but just go on LinkedIn and try talking to people. One thing that I would also say is that make sure that you're on top of your OPT paperwork. When you're looking for a company, make sure that you know that they sponsor international students. At some point you'll have to consider H-1B. And so make sure that you know that after you have a STEM OPT, if you're in a STEM program, the company is able to support you with an H-1B visa. And there are many websites that you can go to find out which employees have these options. But aside from that, I would say, just keep on networking. Many people are open to talking with people from other countries because the diversity in thought actually helps us with our work. I
couldn't agree more. I have really valued working with you, and I think that our next question, we have a lot of people asking a little bit about what Kittelson really looks for in candidates and if there is any difference in what we look for in interns versus full-time hires. So I think, Brandon, if you could take that one, and then please, of course, all other panelists, feel free to chime in.
All right, thank you. Yeah, fundamentally, we focus on characteristics of the individual. And so I'll kind of walk through a few of the key ones we think about. One starts with analytical problem-solving skills. Some of the things Abby talked about. Doesn't mean knowing how to run a software program, not so interested in that. We realize a lot of students coming to us probably haven't had direct experience with the specific kinds of work we do, but the ability to work in a numerical environment, to process data, to follow methodologies, being comfortable and good at that is important. Being strong analytically, having a strong technical foundation. We look for communication skills, ability to share and communicate thoughts, ability to write, present. All of those things are called upon in our job as consultants. We look for kind of intrinsic personal traits, being motivated, self-driven, being collaborative, willing to work and learn from one another. We also look for people who are curious, who want to learn, who maybe push the envelope a little bit and challenge conventional thinking. So again, these are all things we're looking for. Everybody brings strengths and new experiences, and so we're looking at how that fits in overall too, what it contributes. Yeah, anyway, so those are the things we try to look at. I know kind of the last thing I'll say is it's impressive when you look at what it takes just to get into a school, to get through a program. And so the students we're talking to are strong, I think, to begin with. So these are really differentiating traits we seek in staff.
Great, thank you. Anything else from our other panelists?
Honestly, I was surprised they hired me, so I might not be the best person to answer that question.
He's just joking. He's great. Personal experience. Okay, this one is for everyone. We'll go around the room. Amanua, I would love for you to start us off. What is the best piece of advice you've received regarding your career? It's a bit of a toughie.
Yeah, I think I've said this on other webinars before. So if anyone has been on a webinar that I've been before, they'll probably know the answer. It's talk to people. You know, I think that I am where I'm at right now because I do a lot of informational interviews at critical points in my life. And just having people share their experiences with you, you know, helps you know what to look out for, what to avoid, you know, things to pursue. And in my opinion, it helps you to, it's just better to learn from other people, you know, so that you don't make mistakes yourself. Not that there's anything wrong with making mistakes, you learn from mistakes, but being a person that likes optimization, I like talking to people and then, you know, slimming down the process. So I think that the best advice would be talk to people, know what's out there, you know, seek counsel, and it will help you go a long way. I'll pass that over to Brian.
For me, really, I think I was told early in my career is just keep learning, keep striving to improve yourself. For me, and I do mostly design, roadway design. I'm trying to get more into transportation planning, more into signal design, lighting design, other types of design. But I'm trying to grow. You know, once you find your niche, it's not necessarily something you need to sit in for 20 years. You can keep growing, keep learning, and it also helps you keeping up with what's going on in the world, right? The developments in the different types of software that you use in the industry as a whole. So really, that's it. Just keep going and never stop. Never stop learning. Never stopping. I'll pass it along to Abby.
All right. So I already said how important I think it is to understand the process of things. I think for me, it's kind of a combination. The best advice I've ever given is learn the process and be able to communicate that. So if you think about, can you teach a young kid about some skill? If you really know the process, if you really know your art, you can teach anyone. And if you can communicate easily and powerfully, I think that really just helps you advance and grow. I'll give you one quick example of a kind of crazy experience that I had that ended up being really neat. But I used to be responsible for tire safety, tire regulations, and that maybe was not the most sought after competitive type of work in the federal government. But taking my job seriously, learning about how tires work, how they're made, the importance of them on a vehicle, it really helped me grow in my career. And I ended up having an opportunity to write a speech. It was supposed to be delivered by the President of the United States of America. In the end, it was delivered by the Secretary of Transportation. But I got to go to the White House in the middle of a business day, hang out at a NASCAR event with NASCAR drivers, and watch my speech be delivered on the lawn of the White House, all about tire safety. And so had I not taken that opportunity seriously to learn, a lot about tires, and at that point the process, but also really growing my communication skills as well, they would not have opened up a door to have a fun and exciting day like that. So learn the process, learn how to communicate. Writing and public speaking are invaluable in our industry. And Brandon, you're next.
That's good, actually. I know we're getting towards the end, so yeah, if there's other questions, maybe we can hit them. Those are all great points. Yeah.
Rapid fire in 10 words or less. What makes Kittelson stand out from other transportation-focused firms? Starting with Brandon, because he dodged the last question.
National firm, one firm in many locations. We're involved at national research, helping to set guidelines, helping to apply it on the ground and with agencies. More than 10 words, but not many firms that do that.
All right, Ryan.
It's really the engineer you'll become or the planner you'll become. That's probably more than 10. The way they train their young staff it's remarkable. I know some folks in our office, I don't want to name them, but they're going to be really good engineers in 2-3 years from now.
I only have 2 words: industry leaders.
Take us home, Abby.
All right, follow your staff. Create opportunities where we want to grow. And that is a really exciting part of our firm.
Great, thank you all so much. Thank you, attendees, for joining us. And of course, thank you to our panelists. Before we close out, I'm just going to give a gentle reminder that our second webinar in this series covering our internship program will be Wednesday, November 2nd. And you can visit our website to look for that, our LinkedIn page to register. On that note, our internship program is currently accepting applications for summer of 2023, and our careers webpage also has information about full-time positions with Kittelson. If you'd like to reference this webinar later, we will be sending a follow-up email with a recording link. I know a couple of you asked about that in the questions. So thank you all once again for joining, and have a great evening. Good night.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Good night.